You know, something really fascinating is happening for a lot of Puerto Ricans who are taking DNA tests. They're making a discovery that's adding this surprising and pretty significant new layer to their identity. And today, we're going to find out exactly why. It really all boils down to this one question. Imagine this. You spit in a tube, you send it off, and the results that come back spark a genuine mystery, challenging pretty much everything you thought you knew about your roots.
So let's look at a real-world example. This is what happened to Phil Velez, a New Yorker of Puerto Rican descent. He gets his test back and finds out he's 19% Portuguese. That one number, totally unexpected, kicked off this personal quest to figure out where exactly that piece of his heritage was coming from.
And here's the thing, Phil is not alone, not by a long shot. This is a shared discovery that's exploding online. So many Boricuas, a name many Puerto Ricans proudly use for themselves, are finding this strong Portuguese link in their DNA. And it's making everyone ask the same thing. Wait, why wasn't this part of the story we were always told? Okay, so let's dive right in. To really crack this mystery, we first have to understand the foundational story of Puerto Rican ancestry. You know, the one we're all familiar with. For generations, the story of Puerto Rican identity has been this powerful triad: the indigenous Taino people, the Spanish colonizers, and the enslaved Africans who were forcibly brought to the island. It's an incredibly rich and complex history. So, where on earth does Portugal fit into this picture? Our investigation starts with clue number 1, and it points to a direct connection between Portugal and Puerto Rico, one that's kind of been hiding in plain sight this whole time. I mean, just look at this timeline. There was a consistent Portuguese presence on the island for centuries. In fact, and this is wild, by the mid-1500s, Portuguese settlers actually outnumbered the Spanish. These weren't just visitors. They were soldiers, friars, and families, weaving themselves right into the fabric of the island from the very beginning. And you have to remember, the line between Spanish and Portuguese was super blurry back then. For a whole 60 years, they were basically one kingdom, and their royal families were constantly intermarrying. Modern genealogy is even tracing prominent Puerto Rican families, like the Sotomayors, directly back to noble family lines in Portugal. So, okay, that's a pretty strong direct connection, right? But it's not the whole story. Not even close. This alone doesn't really explain why the DNA percentages are so high for so many people. There's a much bigger, more indirect piece to this puzzle. All right, for our second major clue, our investigation takes us to a really crucial stepping stone out in the Atlantic Ocean, the Canary Islands. And this, right here, is where the story gets really fascinating. We've basically uncovered a hidden superhighway for Portuguese genes to get to Puerto Rico. And it's the route that explains the sheer volume we're talking about. And when we say massive, we mean massive. For centuries, the Spanish crown actively encouraged people from the Canary Islands, known as Canarios, to go settle in Puerto Rico. And they came in these huge, steady waves, founding entire villages and becoming a major part of the island's population. The impact was just profound. I mean, look at this number. It's staggering. An estimated 82% of people in some parts of Puerto Rico have Canarian ancestry. That is a huge cultural and genetic footprint. So we have this huge Canarian migration. But how does that solve our Portugal mystery? Well, let's put the final pieces of the puzzle together. Okay, here's the hidden journey, step by step. Way back in the 15th century, long before the big migration to the Caribbean, a ton of Portuguese people had already settled in the Canary Islands. Their DNA got completely mixed into the Canarian gene pool. So centuries later, when all those Canarios moved to Puerto Rico, they brought that hidden Portuguese ancestry right along with them. It was like a secret genetic package deal. And you can actually see the proof right in people's family names. A 2012 study looked at surnames in the Canary Islands and found a really high number of names with clear Portuguese origins, names like Brito, Acosta, and Santos. It's like the linguistic receipt for that deep-rooted Portuguese influence. So when we put all these clues together, a much richer and frankly more complete picture of Puerto Rican heritage really comes into focus. So the big takeaway here is that this wasn't one single event. It was multiple streams all flowing into the island over centuries. You had direct migration from Portugal, you had the political union, and then the real game changer, that massive indirect wave through the Canary Islands. All of it together created this deep and lasting Portuguese connection. You know, this whole journey into a rediscovered piece of Puerto Rican heritage is just a great reminder that our own identities are always more complex and more fascinating than the simple stories we're told. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other hidden histories are just waiting to be uncovered in our own DNA?